Thanks for watching us record our Once Upon a Time podcast. To get every episode automatically, please go to oncepodcast.com and subscribe there in iTunes or now in the Google Play Music Store. But a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, we recorded a podcast on a Friday night and had a bunch of bloopers. They're actually in the episode. I forget what episode that was. It might have been episode 7 of our podcast.
Yeah.
But the last words of that podcast episode were, "We are never recording a podcast on a Friday night ever again." Well, it's Friday night and we're recording a podcast. So this could be really crazy.
Luckily, a vial of magic was at hand, and the loophole is that it's not all the same people.
And I literally just got back off the airplane not long ago from Las Vegas and San Diego and a bunch of travels. So there's travel, there's jet lag, there's
Quitting.
card lag, there's everything going on. So you're going to get all kinds of bloopers probably. But we're back together and giving this episode the attention that it needs. So here we go. And the show notes for this episode will be at oncepodcast.com/244. Starting the episode officially now. You're listening to Once, episode 244, Ruby Slippers. Welcome back to another episode of Once, the unofficial podcast for ABC's TV show Once Upon a Time. I'm Daniel J. Lewis.
I'm Jeremy Laughlin.
And I'm Jacqueline.
And I want to say up front, I think Jeremy and Aaron did a fantastic job with the initial reactions without me.
Well, thanks.
I enjoyed it. Even though I hadn't watched the episode yet, I wanted to listen to the initial reactions while I was driving literally across Death Valley, going from Las Vegas to San Diego. That's why I couldn't be on the podcast this week and why the schedule has been all crazy because I've been traveling and such. But big thanks to Aaron and Jeremy for filling in. And I think they did a fantastic job, worthy of great applause. Thank you.
Round of applause for them.
Well, thank you guys.
And our show notes for this episode will be at oncepodcast.com/244 in case you want to continue this conversation or share this episode out with your family and friends. And I'm glad to be back to the podcast for our full discussions, literally almost right off the plane that we're recording this. But I want to start this conversation with addressing the elephant in the room. Let me just say that again. But I want to start this conversation addressing the elephant in the room, the 800-pound munchkin, the issue on everyone's mind about this episode, and it may even be the sole reason that you're listening to this podcast episode. This statement and what I'm about to say represents my views alone and does not necessarily reflect the views of my co-hosts, staff, or affiliates, or those of Disney, ABC Studios, or any of their staff and affiliates. Once Upon a Time has delved into numerous moral issues, which we have often addressed. These include rape, idolatry, murder, abuse, adultery, fornication, mistreatment of the unborn, and more. They have also addressed positive moral issues like love, commitment, family, adoption, sanctity of life, forgiveness, and repentance. It has been very easy to address such positive and negative issues because most of the community generally agrees with or respects the opinions we have shared. When we hosted our discussions of Quite a Common Fairy from season 3, we chose respectful silence on the ambiguous feelings from Mulan. We respect the community and those with deeply held opposing beliefs and thought silence was the best way to maintain that respect. But for being respectfully silent, we received numerous threats, malicious name-calling, hateful personal attacks, and judgmentally ended relationships, all in the name of tolerance for our not saying anything. Today, I know I'm opening myself to another barrage of such attacks. In the past couple years, we have been open to more discussion about these and other moral issues, even when they have been small asides. Now, Homosexuality is core to this episode, and it has no ambiguity whatsoever. Eddie Kitsis, Adam Horowitz, Jane Espenson, and the other writers of Once Upon a Time have frequently stated clear agendas, including support for, demonstration of, and a desire to portray homosexuality in a particular way. It's no secret that I'm a Christian. I build my thinking on the written word of God, the Bible, which clearly teaches to save sex for marriage and that marriage was created by God to be between one man and one woman for life. At the same time, the Bible is also quite clear that my own sins of pride, selfishness, lust, and many more are also rebellion against God's authority, and thus make me equally worthy of God's judgment, just as if I had committed the most heinous crimes we can imagine. It's only by the willing sacrifice of Jesus Christ and not my own actions that I can have grace and be given mercy from the eternal punishment that I fully deserve. I can't point my fingers or quote, cast stones, unquote, because I am just as guilty as everyone else of rebelling against God, our Creator. When a bunch of men wanted to stone a harlot to death, Jesus himself said in the New Testament, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." And I am not without sin. So I have no right to cast stones of condemnation. In fact, the Bible says Christians are to lovingly judge each other, but leave the unrepentant for God to judge and condemn. And it grieves me to see some Christians mess that up and forget the judgment they equally deserve, if not for Christ. So to my fellow Christians, I ask that you let your light shine and show the world you belong to Jesus Christ by your love while you seek to be salt, not poison, to the world, reminding ourselves and others that there is hope and salvation in the real-life hero and Savior, Jesus Christ. I have previously avoided sharing opinions on the brief moments of homosexuality because I couldn't do it appropriately without being totally authentic about my faith as I am right now. And I didn't feel like our TV show fan podcast was a place to be that preachy, as some might call it. But the issue is now clearly in the foreground, and I know you and the rest of our audience are closely watching us. And I would rather be hated for being authentic and vulnerable than loved for trying to appease others. Everyone has a set of beliefs that affect how they view the world around them, their worldview, as we call it. Some people approach subjects merely consistent with their own worldviews, and some people approach subjects with an agenda to make others accept such worldviews. What bothers me about this episode of Once Upon a Time is not primarily the fact that they had a homosexual relationship. After all, the show is trying to represent all views, no matter how much of a minority, except for, interestingly, Christianity, and give everyone a hero with whom they can relate, including the small portion of viewers who have chosen a homosexual lifestyle. But what bothers me is how much the writers went out of their way to tell this story and glorify the relationship, seemingly simply to include it as a token item and make it seem normal. If the writers had glorified something against your own worldview, I think you would and perhaps have been equally disappointed. Look at how many people lashed out against Once Upon a Time when Neil, an icon of Rumpelstiltskin's hope, was killed for the sake of, quote, bold TV, unquote. Jeremy and Jacqueline are remaining silent on this position at my request, because I want to be clear that what I'm saying is my own opinion. So if you wish to initiate a barrage of hateful and intolerant attacks, please do not direct them toward my co-hosts, staff, or affiliates. If you want to continue the conversation on this issue, I invite you to email me directly, daniel@oncepodcast.com. It goes directly to me, no one else, and it's not filtered or anything like that. This is the hardest thing I've had to do with this podcast, and it has caused an enormous amount of stress over the past weeks, even while I was traveling for business. I am still a fan of Once Upon a Time, and I must let the writers tell the story their way with whatever agendas and worldviews they have. And I am committed to seeing this podcast through to the end of the show. I do still enjoy. So thank you for letting me explain. And if you do wish to continue hearing our in-depth discussions, commentary, and theories we've been delivering for nearly 5 years, then we'll be happy to have you with us on this journey. But if my views suddenly shatter your respect for us, then I won't be offended if you decide to stop listening, supporting, or being part of our community. For a probably outdated list of other Once Upon a Time podcasts, please visit oncepodcast.com/more podcasts. With this lengthy explanation out of the way, the rest of this episode's discussion will address the facts of the storylines and not the opinions on the morality or homosexuality. I need a moment.
Mhm.
Okay. So now let's start our discussion of this episode from the past when Ruby and Mulan meet Dorothy and little Toto too. I, I do laugh at this, and I noticed I'm not the only one who made this note. Some time ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like the writers just gave up.
Well, yeah, because this one should be placeable on a timeline, one would think, but you don't want to. You don't want to risk that at this point.
Yeah. They
Well-
must look at our timeline and see, where can we fit this in? We can't. We'll just let them figure it out on their own.
It shouldn't be that long ago. I mean,
No.
because Ruby and Mulan met during the Camelot arc, during the present day Camelot arc. And then they went off together to find Ruby's pack. And since then, they've only, come back to Storybrooke? Or did that happen? Hang on. John, take that out.
Sorry, John.
Sorry, John. Yeah, it shouldn't be more than a few weeks at most. And maybe not even that, honestly.
Right.
But what I found humorous, and just to give everyone who doesn't listen to the spoilers kind of an indication of what we deal with on a week-to-week basis, this scene was released as a sneak peek. And originally, it did not say some time ago. It said many years ago.
Oh. Well, I am very glad they took that out.
That's hilarious.
Now that the episode has aired, if you would like to go over to the forums and look at our sneak peek thread, you can see me having a meltdown.
Can you imagine if that's how it had gone to air?
I quit podcasting.
That's funny.
I loved that they made reference to a lot of singing.
Yeah.
I like that they made reference to actually reading a book about something that happened in one of these other realms in our world.
Mm-hmm. It's not the first time, after all, because something about Jefferson, I remember back in season 2,
Yeah.
there was David, I think, had said that he heard about it in school, or maybe it was Henry heard about it.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
And Emma referred to the Mulan movie, and she said it was
Oh,
a
that's
good
right.
movie.
I forgot about that.
But how exactly are these two in Oz?
I think it is. I don't know.
It's you have to have a door. We saw that with Robin Hood back in 417, Heart of Gold.
Well,
Rumple provided him a door.
Yeah. It is a lot easier to travel between magical realms than to travel between non-magical and our realm. So it could have been a door. It could have been Jefferson. It could have been someone else with a hat. I think it could have been a number of things.
Could have been a fedora.
Yeah. Just take you to places of adventure.
That's how Carmen Sandiego got around and stole all that stuff.
Which Indiana Jones had to then go and steal back because he said, this belongs in a museum. When pop culture icons collide over a fedora. So it was really weird to see Ruby sniffing around while being a human, too. Like when we saw Granny do it in Hand Red as Blood. Or not, no. When we saw Granny do it in the episode Red-Handed of season 1, she was just walking around. She wasn't like sticking her nose up in the air going.
Ooh, that was some audible sniffing you just did. Yeah, yeah.
Well, can she smell her pack across realms? I mean, I will
Quote of the night.
I will accept that maybe you can get to odds from the Enchanted Forest by some heretofore unreferenced manner. But the idea that Ruby can smell her pack and says, hey, we need to go to a completely separate universe, I don't know how that works.
Maybe it wasn't she smelled her way across realms. Oh my goodness. The kind of conversations we have these days. But maybe it wasn't that she could smell her way across, but it was she followed other clues. Like she heard from someone say, oh yeah, they went to Oz. So then she just knows, okay, I need to go to Oz. And when I'm in Oz, then I'll be able to smell them.
Maybe.
Right. But was she feeling like she was close? Because it seemed like she was just, barking at Mulan about not getting closer, and Mulan having said that a while ago that they were getting closer. And I can't remember why she was so feverishly looking for them in the first place. Unless it was just like you do when you want family and belonging and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much why. She said she wanted to find her own people. But we got kind of an interesting maybe explanation from the Watcher, who said that the writers really could have given this a good explanation. The Wicked Witch did have an army of wolves in the Oz books. In Once Upon a Time, Zelena could have captured them at some point.
That could have been kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah. I like that thought. So Zelena does show up, though, to meet them. And I'm guessing timeline-wise, this is probably this tornado that brought Zelena was probably the actual tornado Regina used when she banished Zelena back to Oz.
Yeah, which makes me curious how Dorothy knew it was the Wicked Witch. Because it's not like Zelena just went about in twisters during her reign of terror in Oz, I assume.
Yeah, because after all, both Zelena and Dorothy came to Oz through a twister.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe Zelena's twister was green and Dorothy's was blue.
Maybe.
So they just know, avoid the green tornadoes.
Do twisters come in gingham?
I did like... Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. I did like the way Zelena referenced Oz as an emerald tinted dump. She's obviously very fond of her homeland.
Right. her castaway island. Really. I liked that she picked up Toto in the basket.
Oh, yeah.
So canonical.
That dog is cute, by the way. I know I've been making lists all season long of the clothing I would like to have, but I would also like the dog.
Maybe it'll be auctioned off for charity
Oh
after
my.
the show is over.
There's something about that sounds so cruel.
But, someone's like, yeah, Put in a few dollars to try and get that dog. When they get back together, and then Ruby and Dorothy start their little walk.
And everybody starts going, wow, they have the same clothes and hair.
Yeah. And similar family relationships in this once upon a time family tree thing. Because remember, I would say to Dorothy, don't be sad, Dorothy. Alice's family wanted her committed too. It's simply what families do. Family is about commitment. So sometimes you have your family committed.
Wow. Children should be able to tell their parents if they get taken to a magical realm and make it back without worrying about being committed.
Mm-hmm. I like the reference back to season 1. I ate my boyfriend. It's not what she said, but
No,
that's
she
what
didn't.
she said in a different episode.
I felt bad for her because it's like she seems to end up telling everybody she meets about killing her boyfriend.
Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm a werewolf, and I ate my boyfriend.
It's just some disclosure, you know.
Right?
In case I get a little peckish, just stand away.
Now, seeing this as the start of their relationship, I totally agree with Jeremy and Aaron in the initial reactions, and apparently the rest of the entire world. This just seemed like things moved along very quickly. Look at the overall picture here. They go on this walk,
Mm-hmm.
and then they come back to their campfire, and then Dorothy runs away.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking an hour.
Right.
Yes, it's a very short time period.
And they weren't, they had their laughs, but they spent part of that time kind of not too sure about each other. Or
Right.
at least Dorothy was pretty standoffish to begin with.
Right. Snow and Charming had much more time than that and ran into each other a lot more after that before a true love's kiss could work.
There needs to be mulling and nets and scars and things like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We care about the relationships on this show, whether it be Snowing or Rumbell or Captain Swan or Outlaw Queen or Swanfire, because we watch them slowly build up and play out more over more than one episode. And we pointed this out a lot this week at the forums. This is becoming a bigger and bigger problem for the show. As much fun as I am having with Hades and Zelina, hashtag Zadies, they fell in love over a bike ride. And the romantic feelings between, for instance, Guinevere and Lancelot were almost non-existent. It was just suddenly they were facing a cloud of darkness and then they kissed.
Well, when you put it like that, but yeah, at least with Zades, I felt that Zelina was desperate for someone to love her and would attach herself to anyone who seemed to. And Hades had been watching her for so long, he probably felt like he knew her, but didn't know he would feel that way when he met her in person. So I felt like even there was more. One side had more familiarity, and the other side was more sort of established as being desperate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a bike ride. Maybe it's something in the moonlight, except they are different worlds, so I don't know.
Daniel mentioned Dorothy's story as being ripped from Alice in Wonderland, from our wonderful Once Upon a Time in Wonderland that was so short-lived. But it's also ripped from the Disney movie Return to Oz, in which Dorothy returns to Kansas and is very melancholy over leaving Oz and is actually sent to a mental institution for electroshock therapy.
I have never seen that. I didn't realize that was an actual thing.
Daniel, movie night then, because I thought of that too, and that movie was so creepy.
Yes.
And I loved it.
I know that there are a lot of euphemisms about this episode, and like how I feel like maybe they were trying too hard to fit things together in this episode to make this relationship work. Because after all, if they were going to do a, a because after all, if they were going to do a lesbian relationship, they seem to have already set it up, or at least that direction that it could have gone with Mulan and Ruby. So to bring Dorothy into this almost seemed like they thought, oh, you know that phrase, friend of Dorothy, that has its origins from the original movie and a lot of things about the positions and cultural ramifications of homosexuality back when the original, or one of the original Wizard of Oz movies was released. And Judy Garland and her being an icon for that movement, a lot of things there. It almost felt like they chose this storyline in this way just because they realized, hey, this would be a clever way of fitting it together. And Mulan is there just for the ride.
I'd heard people mention that was a connection, and I don't know. Honestly, it's very difficult to tell if that was intentional or if it's just a thing where they got the episode finished and went forehead smack. Like maybe they didn't even think of that connection. I don't know. Unless one of them has said it. Often we comment on what writers we're not thinking, and it turns out they've said something on Twitter.
Mm-hmm. And about the quickness of this relationship between Ruby and Dorothy, Price of Magic said in the forums, I don't buy this particular relation. Let me try that again. Price of Magic said, I don't buy this particular relationship. There was no chemistry, and it just feels completely forced. Mulan is rendered completely useless and could be cut out completely without changing the story. For example, have Dorothy make the potion, and that she needed the poppies, hence why she and Ruby went to the field. Basically, this was the neon flashing, quote, special episode, quote. And I know that there were some things beforehand where Kitsis and Horowitz had said that a storyline like this would happen at some point, but they didn't want to make it a special episode for that storyline. But this episode did end up basically being a special episode for that storyline.
Right. And I'm wondering, though, if it's partially because Mulan already has, in the movies anyway, or in the movie, an established love interest. That's, I don't know if canon is too strong of a word, and obviously they don't really care much about what is canon and what isn't, but maybe they just decided, well, let's go with characters that don't already have someone in people's minds.
Well,
and go ahead.
Okay. The Mulan factor is a huge part of why people may not have responded to this episode in the way that Adam and Eddie were hoping. And I'll go into this a little bit more in a few minutes. But to come back to what Jeremy just said, while canon may not mean much to our group of writers, it probably means a lot to their bosses. And in this case, I mean Disney. A lot of people agree that Mulan was set up for a very long time to be a part of this relationship, whoever it ended up being with. And people are wondering if Disney got on some sort of red phone and said, no, 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 no. Because in Mulan, the original movie, she does have a love interest in Shang. And then in the second movie, they do actually get together. And for those who don't know, there is a live action Mulan coming out in about 2 years.
Yeah.
And people this week have really been wondering if Disney saw the direction the show was going and said, you can't do that because we've got to sell our merchandise over the next few years. And we don't want people to be put off by what they've seen in your show. And that's why Dorothy literally fell out of the sky 2 episodes ago, did absolutely nothing, and then suddenly is in a relationship with Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, and we might end up going to that other conversation you wanted to have. this is for those who were a fan of the Mulan Aurora relationship, or who wanted to see Mulan find her happy ending and find a relationship. Those fans were then let down with this episode too,
Yeah.
because here was the setup. They did the setup already, and I'm sure many of the fans were hopeful of a certain end result, and then the letdown to those fans in this episode. But I think you're hitting on to a good point there, that probably they chose it because of reasons.
And then just sad Mulan again.
Right, because Dorothy, even though she's in Oz and we've got her and the Wicked Witch, and we even had the Scarecrow, I mean, she hasn't been doing anything that is distinctly Dorothy, even though she's apparently got the love of the people. She's, I think, literally just there for this episode. And yeah, a lot of people were just very upset that Mulan, once again, is just standing there witnessing all of this and doesn't play any kind of part.
Right.
Um,
So Mulan, though, does get to play the part of helping Ruby to think things through, and reference back to Mulan's supposedly being late. And I don't think Mulan was late, because she said, "Oh, I was too late," and referring to telling Aurora how Mulan felt about her. But the thing was, Aurora was already with Prince Philip.
Yeah.
And in a relationship with him, a committed relationship. And so she was way too late. Like,
Right.
not just showed up a few minutes or a day late. She was years too late.
Like, by the time she met Aurora, right?
Yeah. It was already too late. Sorry, my headphones are
I was
messing
gonna
up
say, what you
again.
doing over there?
yeah.
Jacqueline, can you say something for a moment?
Hello, what would you
Okay.
like me to say?
Yeah, that's good enough.
Oh, I thought you wanted space filled or something.
I just needed to make sure I
Oh.
could still hear.
No, now that Jeremy said that, I was like, oh gosh, was I supposed to say something relevant? And
Oh, no. So we're on the last scene from past here.
yeah. Okay. A lot of it we hit.
Is the funny thing about the poppy somehow relevant enough to mention?
I think it's funny enough to mention.
Okay.
I do.
Okay. So let's just talk about the field of poppies for a second. They start to walk in, and I'm already kind of trying to figure out what she's talking about as Dorothy goes, "This is Zelina's territory," which, what defines that? I'm not sure. I would think all of Oz was subject to Zelina if Zelina were present. But she stops Red from, I guess, tripping over a flower or something and putting herself to sleep, and says, one sniff of that and we'll be snoozing all night. Then she picks one up and hands it to her. And I was thinking,
smells low.
That whole field scene was just hilarious. And I don't know that they intended it to be, because from the poppy to suddenly Dorothy climbing on the back of Red and running away from a flying monkey. I mean, you don't see that every day.
right.
And speaking of flying monkeys, you know who swoops in and rescues the podcast and lifts us up, not in a bad way, but in a good way, and lifts the podcast to better places?
You know who swoops in and lifts us up and carries us off to Zelina?
Our wonderful heroes. So big thanks to Lisa Slack, Dave Newland, and our 31 heroes on Patreon for supporting the podcast. And in fact, hold on. There is...
Wait, who's talking about custard and fish fingers in the chat?
There's something I'm missing.
I told you guys I look at the chat when Daniel starts talking about sponsors. It's not that I don't care. It's just that it's a chance for me to not talk.
There are new heroes I wanted to thank, and I didn't include them in my notes.
New heroes? Did they come out of a twister?
Yes.
No, only villains come out of twisters.
Ruby came out of a twister.
Stop using logic.
I have things to say about that, Twister. I don't really.
Okay, let me see. It's Lisa. And just gotta check my email. Email. I check the email. You check the email. I check the email. You check the email. I like the email. You like the Gmail.
What is happening?
Daniel might need to go to sleep, guys.
The best thing is it's not only Friday night, but Daniel's jet lagged and tired and hungry.
Yeah, so I'm hangry. I'm getting hangry.
You're getting angry.
Hangry.
That's hungry, angry. No, I don't. New hero.
Hangry.
And
Hamburger. I don't know. I tried to make it work and it didn't.
oh, you would love these hamburgers that Jenny and I had. If you ever go to Las Vegas, go to Holstein's inside the Cosmopolitan.
Okay. Did you get the heavenly cheesecake again?
No, we got instead these amazing burgers.
Was it the same place though?
No, completely different place.
Okay.
We didn't go back to the cheesecake place because I did bring back some cheesecake leftovers for Jenny last time I was
You mean
in
the
Vegas.
Cheesecake Factory?
No, there's a place in Vegas, an Italian restaurant that makes this amazing cheesecake. So, like you'll feel like you're dying, but it's a good thing. That it's that good of cheesecake. And then we also got these burgers at this place called Holstein's. The burgers were like $20. Well, we got one and we split it, and that was really enough. But it was so good. We did eat a In-N-Out burger too, and that was just meh.
It was
Sorry, world.
Yeah, I had In-N-Out for the first time whenever I was in California, and I went there like 3-4 times, and it was good, especially for the price. But I haven't been just like, I want to go back to In-N-Out.
Yeah. Apparently, the good burgers are the secret menu items, so I didn't order the right thing. Okay, here we go. And for this episode, let me just mark that so John knows where to cut or so. And for this episode, I'd like to thank Lisa Slack, David Newland, and we have a couple new heroes who have recently swooped in or been dropped by a tornado in a good way. Ashley Reed and Armando Trujillo.
Do you want to try that one again?
I think I would.
Mando Julio. I mean, hi.
Trujillo. Oh, it's Spanish, so the J, Trujillo.
Yeah,
That's
the J
probably
would be a Y.
closer. Yeah, Trujillo. Okay, let me do this again. Specifically, thanks to Lisa Slack, David Newland, and a couple new heroes supporting us through Patreon, Ashley Reed and Armando Trujillo. Thank you very much for your kind support of Once Podcast. We are very grateful for that. We could not do the podcast without you, and we now give special bonuses like bloopers, which there are going to be some great bloopers this week. Some bloopers from when Jeremy and Aaron did the initial reactions.
So many.
The way that they communicated why you should become a hero to the podcast must have been so good because Ashley and Armando joined after hearing Jeremy and Aaron do that. So thank you very much. We have 32 heroes on Patreon right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would like to be a hero to the podcast as well, please go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. All right, let me get back to my notes here.
I don't know what happened, but my phone, when I try to type haha, by the time I hit the second H, it's asking if I want to say one word, haha blooper. I'm not really sure how that happened, but it's great.
Okay. So let's get back to present day Underbrook. They bring Snow back, and now we know, or not Snow. They bring Ruby back, so yes, we know Ruby is alive in the underworld.
And
but
the way they knew that, though, did they not say she's breathing?
yeah.
So do the dead in the underworld go about not breathing? Or even appearing to breathe?
Good question, but we do know that the breath of the living in the underworld is very valuable on the black market.
True.
They do everything else, though. I mean, how many people were sitting at Granny's and later Auntie's having a bowl of soup or a rotisserie chicken?
That's true. I wonder if they have to go to the bathroom.
I wonder how they
Well,
get
they have a
food
toilet.
into. How do they get food
Yes.
into this? Or like, where do they get electricity? And do they have internet? And
They even have to make sure that their food service establishments don't have contaminated water.
yeah, and do they have pesticides? And oh, okay.
Oh, Rumple, you scared me.
But meanwhile, Hades and Zelina start to discuss the fact that Ruby has come to town. And I think that Zelina is genuinely interested in not failing again. But at the same time, it seems that she also wants to cover up her past and hide the mistakes she's made.
I think I agree because she and Regina seem to have reached some sort of very small, limited understanding from that conversation in Granny's last week, where, Regina does say that, yes, she's trying to get information about Hades and Hades' weakness, but she's also showing sisterly concern. So I think Zelina wants to stay in that happy bubble, but she really doesn't want anyone else to know what she did.
Right. And I guess what I didn't understand about this is, was she preparing to leave the underworld without her baby?
Yeah, I think so.
Huh.
Because later on in the episode, it seems like that's what she was communicating, is that she realized if she stays, she'll just fail again.
Well, that's true. She even clicked her heels once
Yeah.
before they stopped her. If they'd been 5 seconds later, she'd have been gone.
I did find it really funny that here's Hades, kind of the devil, but not really.
Dude, you're kind of the devil.
And he's saying to Zelina, I'll give you everything you want, which is a classic line from the devil.
He also wants to know if she wants chocolates, though. So, does the devil offer people chocolate?
He might. Why do you think dark chocolate and devil's food? That's made of what? Lots and lots of chocolate.
What? Oh, yes. I was thinking somehow oppositely. I was thinking angel food. Is that the opposite? Is that light baking versus dark baking?
Yeah. It's like magic and dark magic. Light magic makes white chocolate. Dark magic makes dark chocolate.
I really like dark chocolate.
That's unnatural.
I think that someday there will be someone powerful enough who can wield the power of white chocolate and dark chocolate together for good.
Oh,
They get
man.
big milk chocolate?
Oh, man.
What did this conversation
I don't know, but I'm going to let that one stay in the episode.
Hashtag not a blooper. Hashtag no filter.
Because this gives our audience a new perspective on white chocolate and dark chocolate. But getting back to the actual episode, what did you think, though, about Zelina feeling like she did something to Dorothy? I'm sorry, let me say that. But what did you think about Zelina saying she did something to Ruby?
This line or this moment from Zelina, once you watch the episode in its entirety and you reflect back on this scene, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because Zelina says something like, after what I did to her, implying Ruby, because Ruby is still the subject of this little tete-a-tete with Hades. But she didn't do anything to Ruby, and she has no idea that Ruby and Dorothy are going to be in a relationship. So why does she even think that she did anything to Ruby?
Right.
And why is she so worried about Regina finding out what she did to Ruby?
The first time you watch it, you think, oh, we're going to find out what that is through the flashbacks. But you're right. In retrospect, you're like, well, not really.
My guess, and here I go defending the show again. My guess is there was something cut that would make sense of that. Like Ruby announcing in some way that Zelina knows. Ruby saying, "I'm going to get you. I'm coming after you," or "You better run and hide, witch. I'm coming to get you."
No, I'm gonna get you is Selena's line.
Yeah.
My pretty.
So most likely, I'm thinking something was cut.
Okay. You think that.
Back up top, Rumple and Belle are together, and I keep hating that they up top of Underbrook. So I guess
Yeah,
that's not really up top.
Yeah, I kind of
Top
wondered
of-
what you meant.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was like, wait, no, they're still in Underbrook.
What's like the upper level of hell?
But they were at Zelena's house, so they weren't lower. In fact, they might have been higher because they were up on Zelena's little hill.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay, so oops. Across town, Rumple and Belle are arguing, and
As they do.
one of the things I think they should have been arguing about is no, this wasn't a loophole. Hades did not find a loophole. Belle, you never agreed to Hades' contract. There is no loophole in that. You, my friend, are the weakest link, or the loophole. You are the reason why your baby still belongs to Hades because you didn't agree to that contract.
That is one of the most harsh things I've ever heard anyone say. You are the reason your baby belongs to Hades.
Wow, that does sound bad.
This scene just I think I probably said on Sunday in the initial reactions podcast a lot of how I felt about this scene, but here again, it's the Cruella syndrome. Belle's going on and on about in a moment I could have shown him mercy and condemning his soul and darkening hers, and it's just, Belle, it was an accident. And even if it wasn't, I mean, I didn't get the sense when I saw it happen that she meant for him to fall all the way in. Mm-hmm. And even if she did, he was about to do the same thing to someone that she was defending. She gave them both a chance to not hurt the other. And the one who struck first, she stopped. And she didn't mean to. It was reflex even. I just don't think that any of these thoughts, I mean, maybe they're natural to some degree, but I'm not even sure this is where, I mean, I hope this isn't how I would feel if I accidentally hurt somebody defending somebody else and trying to get everyone to just stop hurting each other.
It means your heart has turned to darkness.
I don't know. It was even less on purpose than what Emma did to Cruella. And I'm just not seeing it. So I don't know.
Yeah, the whole "I darkened my soul just to save you" is such a sad line.
Yeah.
And between this one that Belle gave, and then at the very end of the episode, Rumple says something like, "Do you think I would give up my darkness or my power just to wake you up?" And I'm kind of sitting here watching this episode going, what are you doing to this ship? Stop it. Because those are not nice things to say when you're also trying to convince me that these two are still happily, well, okay, not happily, but agreeably married and still supposed to be true loves. Because last episode, episode number is this? This is 18, 17. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Because last episode, Belle says that she and Rumple have to work together because she knows that Rumple will defend their child no matter what. And at the end of that episode, she says darkness will always win. And she seems to be coming around to the idea that there is gray in the world, that she can't have this black and white worldview. But now in this episode, we're just back to her wanting to work on her own, and that, it's this or it's that, and she has to make demands on him and he has to make demands on her. And it makes me sad what they've done to this little ship.
Yeah.
Do you guys even root for Rumble anymore? I'm genuinely asking people out there, do you still root for them in any meaningful way?
It's tough because it was such a beautiful relationship at the beginning.
Yes.
But they've gone through such horrible things. And I'm not saying like horrible as in the kinds of quote horrible unquote things that modern marriages go through. I mean, I've gone through hard things in my marriage, and yes, it's good to go through and come out the other side and be at a better place. But with Rumbell, it's completely different.
Yeah, and it's that whole thing that tries to be relatable, but because of the nature of Rumple, it's not relatable because they keep changing the nature of what his character is. And really, they've kind of progressed to cut out some of the things that he's been in the middle, which there have been several. He's gone from this selfish man who took power partially with good intentions, although we've learned more, but this cursed man trying to be good and Belle loving the man behind the beast. And there were a lot of problems even in that. People had a lot to say about the unhealthy aspects of their relationship even then and the things that he kept doing. And now they've gone to same old Rumple after all the growth, but now she's just supposed to accept the darkness.
Yeah, the way a marriage works.
But not in a way that even seems like accepting flaws. It just feels worse to me.
Yeah. And the way a marriage works, and here I'm the only married person on our staff of people with the podcast, but so this is the lesson I've learned in my own marriage that has made our marriage go from honeymoon phase to rough phase to wonderful phase is I have to learn to change and grow. And my wife, Jenny, needs to learn to change and grow. And when we've learned to do that, we're both changing and growing. That's when marriage becomes wonderful. So any two people, regardless of compatibility things and stuff, Jenny and I are technically incompatible because we're both lastborns in our family. And most people say, oh, lastborns should never get married to each other. But we are lastborns. We have incompatibilities and more show as time goes on. But the thing is, we learn to change and grow to become better people, and marriage makes people better people when you stick it through. But here in the Rumbell relationship, it's basically Rumple saying, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to grow. You have to accept me with all of my nasty habits, and you will accept me because I'm who I am. And
yeah, there's a difference between I am not perfect and I'm probably always going to cause you pain at sometimes, as people do, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I hope you'll forgive me. And you know what? I'm done trying. This is who I am. Deal with it. You love it like this. Like, really?
And there is always room for grace and forgiveness. So regardless of the crime, and I'm not saying no consequences, because there can still be consequences even when you forgive. But what I would like to see is at some point Rumple essentially repent and ask forgiveness and change. And then that's the relationship I would love to see. I don't want to see this whole thing of I'm going to continue being dark and you like that. And
yeah.
So
the honesty is refreshing. And I guess that's been a big part of what's been causing her pain. But yeah.
So ultimately, I would like to see them work it out, especially since they are actually married in the show. I mean, actually married. So I want to see them make that marriage work.
So that would be my answer to the question. I root for them, but not just as a relationship. I root for their character development and their relationship. Some actual development.
Which is not going to work so well if Belle decides to keep doing things on her own.
And self-harming.
Yeah, that hurt the situation a little bit.
But I guess we'll get to that.
Well, and speaking of self-harming, no, this is not a transition to sponsors. We already think them.
Goodness sake.
I think the show is kind of harming itself in many ways because of all of the new rules and things we're discovering. Like the next scene is Ruby explains how she got to the underworld. A tracking spell. So it's not just the tracking spell led me. It's the tracking spell took her from one realm to another.
Right.
Since when does a tracking spell actually take someone?
And deposit you in another realm. And not just another realm, but the underworld. which technically isn't a realm you can travel to,
Right.
by the way. So, I mean, all the stuff with Rumple's blood and blah, blah, blah. Well, okay.
All we needed was a tracking spell.
Yeah, well, maybe it only works on the living. So.
Exactly. That could be the loophole there.
So first the living had to, and she didn't mean to go to the underworld. That's just where it took her, and then made her an out of control, supersonic speed traveling wolf that would kill Snow White. Which I also don't understand. There was no explanation as to why she was so out of control and so fast.
Unless it was just a big hug and we didn't get to see the hug aspect
Yeah,
of it.
Emma freaked everybody out for nothing. It was just, oh, I'm so happy to see you. Which is only her voice.
As dogs do.
Oh, gosh. It's only her voice in wolf form. I haven't seen you in a long time, and I love you. Or, I've just met you, and I love you.
Hello. Cruella and Claude are destroying the phone booth. And I wondered, is that the Claude that Hook killed? Remember, back in season 2, that Claude was the body that Hook used to get to Claude was the body that Hook used to get to Wonderland to be able to bring Cora back. An exchange there, since 2 people in, 2 people out. That was the Hat's rules.
Oh, Claude.
Yeah, and Claude was the guard that Hook killed on his way to Belle's cell.
What's his unfinished business?
Probably guarding Belle. I'm supposed to be guarding Belle, and you put a hook in my neck.
Poor Claude.
I don't know if it's the same Claude, but that's the only other Claude we've had. And we never really got that good of a look at Claude. I know there was some episode somewhere, and we could probably look it up, but I'll just pretend that's the same Claude that Hook clawed. Boom.
Oh.
For those wondering, it's episode 209, Queen of Hearts.
Hashtag hire the nerd.
That's great.
Jacqueline, you're amazing.
He was also referenced in 211, The Outsider.
I liked this scene in that we had already wondered aloud why this phone box is allowed to exist, since it seems to give hope. I don't know why it took them so long, but I guess maybe people were hopeless anyway because they didn't know if it was working.
Exactly.
With Henry around, they know it works. So now it gives more hope than it did. At least if our heroes have told anyone, hey, our haunting totally worked. But now it's being ripped out. Poor everybody.
But at least Cruella did clarify that she gets all her orders from Hades.
Yeah. So she's like Hades' bulldog, now that his bulldog is dead. There's so much irony in that statement, actually.
Yeah.
I did quite enjoy Cruella's insults to the Charming clan, though. She's so delightful when she's mean. Like calling baby Snowflake Chisel Chin Jr. and the fact that they read him incredibly dull bedtime stories.
Yeah.
Does she listen to the hauntings?
Maybe.
Probably. She's got to find something to do down there.
Creepy mayor who creeps.
It's like the old-fashioned phone lines where you could get on the line and hear what someone else was talking about. Regina stops Zelena from trying to leave the underworld. And we hear that Zelena got the slippers from Ruby or from Dorothy. And that's how Zelena got to Storybrooke in the first case. So we were wondering how that happened. Why no tornado? Why no big portal? Why anything like that? It was the slippers that got her there.
At least that's an established means of transportation.
Right. I'm totally okay with that because the slippers are, after all, something that Rumpelstiltskin wanted at one point to be able to travel to the land without magic. Go back to the episode The Doctor for that conversation that Rumpelstiltskin has with Jefferson. Slippers for pistachio, easy. I don't remember this scene.
So
Zelina wants the baby for the slippers.
who's she talking to in this scene?
Regina.
Yeah.
I think I have nothing on this scene because I don't remember this note.
Not Todo?
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely one of the drinking scenes.
Oh, I remember why I said not
Yes.
Toto.
This is where I have the whiskey reference.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. One of you make the transition. I don't have anything to say here.
Well, Regina and Zelina end up going inside Zelina's house and having some drinks and some honest conversation.
Which I was relieved at this conversation because there was a break in between, and before the break, Zelina had been saying, "Wow, sometimes I'm just too clever," because she thought Dorothy would be asleep forever, and I was like, "Don't be." I think I had written something down. I was making notes, and I said something like, "I guess this is the flip-flop phase of redemption," or something, because for so long Regina went back and forth and things like that, but Regina clarified for Zelina that she wasn't really proud of what she did. She was just caught. And so she's inside sort of drowning her sorrows over her life, basically.
And she's drowning them in Moloch brand whiskey. And Moloch appears frequently in the Old Testament. He's a Canaanite god of child sacrifice. Usually the children were thrown into this big flaming called almost like, hang on. The children were usually thrown into this fire pit and burned alive. I thought it was interesting because while Moloch isn't necessarily a Greek deity, in some Latin text, he is referenced as being likened to Cronus, who is Zeus and Hades' father that I've talked about before, because he eats children.
Oh my goodness.
So if you've ever wondered what that tastes like, then apparently that's the brand whiskey to get. But it's interesting that while they have this brand of whiskey already, McCutcheon, that they refer to frequently or have,
Right.
they don't use the same thing down here in the underworld. Instead, this one, I think this is very fitting for the underworld, where like the snacks on Granny's are red hot peppers, and the whiskey down here is the name of this
Considering the whiskey,
horrible reminder.
considering the whiskey and the circumstances and who runs Granny's, we should be happy that the snacks are peppers.
True, very true, and not. You get chicken fingers in the overworld, in the underworld, you get something else.
Frog legs, baby legs. Oh goodness, gravy or butter. Anyway, moving on.
When they were in the graveyard, they mentioned something about Hades possibly making a move on Storybrooke. And I think that sounds like a cool thing. In fact, I think that sounds like a really fun final battle between good and evil.
Someday, Daniel, you're actually going to be right on this.
I'm looking for a final battle under every plot rock there is.
See, I think the reality is that was just a vague, ambiguous thing, and it was probably the final battle for the end of the original curse. However, I think at some point they will call something flat out the final battle just to make everybody happy.
And a very big, grand finale, which will be really cool. And speaking of finales, we are working on our plans for a finale party in the greater Cincinnati area. I'm a bit behind because of my business travel recently, but we'll try to get those details together as soon as possible. If you want to come, for now, the best thing to do is email daniel@oncepodcast.com if you'd like to come to that finale party. So I'll definitely know who wants to show up for it and be able to give you details as soon as I know. I'm looking for my transition.
Wave of babies.
Well, Belle and Zelina are kind of having a party.
Yeah. Some little...
This is why Daniel's in charge of transitions.
No, that works fine.
That's perfect.
Yeah, worked fine. I want to keep that. That's the transition. Yeah, a bit of advice from one baby's mama to another.
Oh gosh.
Wait, are we being serious right now? I can't tell
Yeah,
if we're.
yeah.
He said he was going to keep the transition, but then nothing actually transitioned. And then
Well, because
there's
I
baby
I
mama.
was looking at the wrong spot.
Baby's mama.
Okay, let me then move on with this. And it's very understandable that Belle doesn't trust Rumple yet. I mean, good job, Belle. Yeah, you really can't trust him. I don't know if I can trust Rumple. Yeah, I don't think anyone can trust
Yet,
Rumple.
still, again, ever.
But at the same time, this was my problem with this scene. So Belle can't trust the Dark One, who happens to be her husband and her child's father, but she can trust Zelina, the woman who killed her husband's first child. But she doesn't trust Rumple's dark magic, but she'll trust Zelina's dark magic.
Maybe
I
Selena's is green magic. Is that a thing?
Is there green chocolate? Because apparently our magic is chocolate.
Oh, you're right. There's no green chocolate, at least not
Andy's
normal.
mints. Maybe?
Selena's magic is mint chocolate? Hmm.
What about
Okay.
that? We're gone.
I was going to transition and then I couldn't decide if you were going to transition.
Oh, if you have a transition, go ahead.
Okay. So we haven't done any Greek mythology this episode, really. So I thought I would bring this up. Zelina calls Hades the Lord of Death. This isn't strictly speaking true.
Right.
Hades is just the lord of the underworld. In Greek mythology, there is actually a god of death. His name is Thanatos, which also happens to just be the Greek word for death. He is the son of Nyx, night, and Erebos, darkness, and his twin brother is Hypnos, who is sleep. And he is generally depicted, when he's depicted, because it's not often, as carrying humans off to the underworld in their sleep.
Ah,
Huh.
that's a good way to go.
So don't be hypnotized.
What do you think of Hook and Charming's heart to heart?
Chatting with the father-in-law. Wow. Sort of.
Potential
Maybe
father-in-law.
the if he is saved from the underworld and brought back to life, possible father-in-law. Something like that.
I give some credit to Hook here. I do think it's about time that he sounded a little more grateful to everybody for what they're doing, especially since he put them in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't acknowledged that last part. He does apologize to Charming, for the fact that they're away from their son, that this is really difficult, that they may never get out. But he still doesn't say, and by the way, I'm really sorry that I tried to send you all down here in the first place. I'm sorry that I almost killed Merlin. Or no, he didn't almost kill Merlin. John, take that out. He doesn't apologize for killing Merlin. It's just, I'm sorry the situation sucks, which props to him. I'm very glad he said something, but it's still that next step he needs to take. It's like he's always on the precipice of actual redemption, or at least some sort of start of redemption, and then he just scurries back.
Yeah, I mean, look how Belle feels for causing more suffering to someone already dead and in the underworld when he was about to do the same to somebody else, and yet Hook doesn't seem to. He's got some remorse, but yeah. And Belle would be on that list. Did he actually apologize, or did they simply acknowledge it back in the day?
Between Hook and Belle?
Yeah.
Well, he gave a very half-hearted, kind of snarky apology in Quiet Minds 315, where Emma kind of glares at him and he sort of does, sorry, which is all we've ever gotten. But I mean, Belle seems to have accepted it, whether or not the audience should.
See, find a way to help Hook move on. That's all I'm saying. Let's find a way to help Hook move on. His story can be done. Don't hate me.
Send hate mail too.
I want the record to show that Jeremy said it. Not me.
Yep, I'll let the record show that.
I was starting to like him, but no. Some of these recent things, I'm just starting to remember who he is.
It's fun to see the blind witch in any episode.
I do enjoy her. And she's gotten more screen time this season than the original episode, I would think.
Yeah. We get to see more of her personality, her witty lines, her jokes, her little pokes and jabs at the other characters.
Her comment about it's not your diner yet was interesting. Does that mean if Ruby dies and goes to the underworld, she gets the diner?
Yeah, what happens when Granny dies? Does she take over Granny's?
Probably, yeah. Or maybe they get to work for Auntie Anne's. I'm sorry, I mean Auntie M's, where you can't get a delicious pretzel. Not a sponsor, by the way, just good food.
Wow.
So they used the water from the river to poison the soup. A little bit of a stretch, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. They were trying to stretch the soup. That's what you do.
Dilute it with the...
But see, this is what I mean. The underworld needs a health inspector and sanitation control to make sure that this does not happen again.
Yeah.
Or they just need to, defeat Hades and stuff.
But it was a really neat thing to see. First of all, awesome special effect. But also really neat to see that done when it's a very Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Like the sounds and the screams and stuff was very similar to the Wicked Witch. I'm melting. Oh, what a world. What a world. What a cruel world. Although I know Auntie M didn't say that, but that's essentially what was happening there.
They melted Auntie M instead of the Wicked Witch. What in the world? I hadn't even thought of it like that. But I have to say, just with the line, all you need to do is blow a kiss into the bottle, it just had me thinking that this is a perfect example of how I feel it should go every single time they start running around, spouting off, yeah, just do this and this and this, and then this thing will happen and this, and they've got this whole magical theory with no experience or documentation to back up what they're doing. All the MacGuffin chasing. But this time, they're completely off base. I mean, I suppose True Love's whiff, as Manic had it in the chat, might have worked if they'd wanted the plot to go that way. Obviously, it would have worked, but I think they were just barking up the wrong tree. Couldn't resist.
This episode's just full of it tonight.
Hades was full of disrespect, mopping her up with his foot, no less.
Yeah.
He was full of awesome. He melted an old lady, mopped her up with a dish rag, and then wrung her into a mason jar. We need to keep him forever.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad you loved him for all of that.
But all of this to make a lesson of her.
Mm-hmm.
An effective lesson, I think.
He put them all on the untouchables list.
Mm-hmm.
Don't deal with these heroes. And he did the villain thing, and he expounded upon his reasons for what he was doing in this scene. And you need to remember that for later discussion in this episode.
Okay.
I really liked the line, "It's hard to be a savior when no one wants you to save them."
Yeah.
I am really hoping that before the end of this season, Hades and Emma really have some kind of big confrontation. Because how do you not have the savior go up against, someone who is often conflated with the devil?
Yeah.
And I love these moments of antagonism between Hades and Emma because it just feels so weighted and cosmic. And the fact that I think he's right. How does she be a savior if you know, people are kind of constantly telling her, no, don't save me. And now these people don't want to be saved by Emma because even an attempt to talk to her or be saved is going to render them into soup.
Mhm. Sorry, don't have anything to add to that. I thought that was pretty well said.
Well done. Sorry, John.
Oh, John, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Yeah, good point. And then we see Snow and Ruby get to have a heart-to-heart conversation. And Jacqueline, can you just jump in with what you want to say there?
Yeah. This was a really great scene, I think, because the writers remembered that Snow and Red have a lot of history. And it's been a while since these two have interacted on screen. But when they do, you're instantly reminded of everything Snow White and Little Red Riding Hood went through, starting with Red Handed back in season one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just so happy that sometimes they bring up these very old relationships.
Yeah, and I was glad they did because I couldn't place exactly where Snow was coming from because I think I still often see her as Mary Margaret, and I'd forgotten the history until she said it. And then, yeah, it all came back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was appropriate that this conversation, the context happened between these two because Little Red Riding Hood was really there for Snow when Snow White was struggling with her feelings for Charming, especially when Charming was about to marry Abigail. And, Ruby's encouraging Snow, go after him.
What did you think about this whole idea of changing the names? So David's name written in instead of Snow's name.
It's nonsense.
Well, so it is true that that his hook was enchanted because he was going to have trouble with the chisel, right?
Okay, so this week, this was a big topic, and credit to Matt, who went back and decided to watch all the scenes with this so that we could get clarification. But he said Hook actually never said that Hades enchanted his hook to carve the names. He
Oh.
said that he enchanted my hand to carve these markings in the first place. Back in the episode Labor of Love, Hades shows the hook to Emma and drops it on the ground before leaving. This took place before Hades asked him to chisel names too. Hook continues to be hookless until Emma saves him in The Devil's Due. So I'm guessing Emma kept the hook and returned it to him. So I think the enchantment was done to Hook's hand, and that was what gave him the power to carve names rather than the chisel itself.
Okay.
Interesting.
But can it really work? Because remember, David and Snow share a heart. So technically, it shouldn't really work.
Well, they clearly have soul on the mind and not heart.
Yeah.
Or I don't think Belle would have, in my opinion, accidentally said she darkened her soul, not her heart.
Yeah.
True.
And there's no better leader for Storybrooke than Snow White. And Regina goes, ouch.
Along with the Snow and David's names being swapped, David again brings up the idea that the rules down here are a life for a life. So how do you get Hook home?
Yeah.
He's technically dead.
Well, I have a theory.
Yes, maybe they could come out of the well.
This goodbye between Snow and Charming felt so big that I think they're going to kill Charming. And Charming will be the one, either he'll die or he'll sacrifice himself so that Hook can return, so that his daughter's boyfriend can be, so that so that his daughter can be with the man she loves. Look at a bunch of movies out there. Armageddon is one coming to mind, where, spoiler, but it's an old movie, where the father sacrifices his life so that this guy can go back and be with the son. It's the ultimate sign of acceptance and take care of my little girl for me, and that some of that stuff, and that happens in several movies. I feel like something like that is going to happen here in Once Upon a Time, that they are going to kill Charming because this goodbye was so emotional, so much wrapped in this. It seemed like such a big goodbye that I think it might be their last. And there was no statement of, I will always find you.
Well, that jinxed the whole thing right there.
It did.
If they do that, I'll not be happy. Just saying.
It was a really powerful goodbye. And I love that they reincorporated the snowing true love music back into that scene,
Yeah.
which every time you hear it, I'm instantly taken back to the final episode of season 1.
Anything else to say here in this scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
As the departure was, as they were preparing for departure, Regina asked them to look in on Roland, which at first I thought was touching. I can't decide if it's touching because she's sort of being a bit motherly to Roland, or if it was just low budget because they didn't have Robin in the episode.
Well, Robin is in the woods, hidden there with Pistachio,
Oh.
keeping Pistachio away from Hades.
Huh.
So I think that's why Robin wasn't there.
Does he have diapers and things?
They have big leaves. That's what they have.
Well, one final note here about these tombstones. A couple of us wondered if Hook can now chisel new names onto the headstones in place of others. Why don't they just think of 3 really nasty villains and swap them out? So I came up with Blackbeard and King George. All of whom we don't really care about anyway, so let's just put them in the underworld.
Here's what I think would be the reason.
Okay.
If they're they're represented somewhere in the underworld by their own grave markers already, whether they're intact or knocked over or cracked. And so it has to be someone who's living and technically does not have one whose name is on it. Because he also could have put his own name, technically, except that he already has one because he's dead.
Then does that mean there's a grave marker out there ready for David Nolan? And Hades himself put the names of Regina, Emma, and Snow on there without them having a grave marker already.
But he's Hades, and he can do that.
Well, but
Right.
that works because they're alive.
And they're in the underworld.
So he could make one for them because they didn't already have another one.
Right. It's not like Hades can bring someone to the underworld by writing their name on a tombstone and then they show up in the underworld. Because then he could have done that a bunch of times in order to get people down there.
Right. He could have written Selena's name on one.
And speaking of Zelina and Hades, they have drinks together. And they mentioned the sleeping curse.
They have drinks together, and I'm glad he didn't accidentally open the mason jar.
Oops, wrong one. No, I'm a little conflicted about this sleeping curse in the first place. Snow had to choose to eat the apple. Rumple told David it had to be willingly taken. And we don't really know about Aurora, but we do know Aurora. Oh, wait a minute. Do we know?
We do. In season 2, she told us by telling Philip and Mulan that she deliberately took the sleeping curse to protect her people. But in season 4, Enter the Dragon, she doesn't take it willingly at all, like it's forced upon her or something. So retcon
Yeah.
many of them, because the same thing happened with Dorothy, that Zelina basically got the upper hand on her, pricked Dorothy's finger herself, and Dorothy was instantly put in a sleeping curse.
Unless it was something, let's call it a deleted scene, where maybe Zelina was like, I'm going to kill all of the munchkins, all of the people who love you, unless you prick your finger on this.
That could be.
You know, Zelina and Hades just really have such a weird relationship.
Well,
Because it's like, hey, baby, I'm going to go kill a bunch of people for you. Oh, that's so heroic.
thank you for the dead flowers earlier. So this is where remembering everything he said at the diner, the other diner, is important, because he talked a lot about how he couldn't have hope and how he needed to keep people from having hope and talking to them and all these things. He had all these reasons for why he did what he did. But what did he tell Selena? I did it all for you. Just because I know how much you hate Dorothy and I didn't want them to be able to wake Dorothy up. That was my only motivation. So he's lying to her. And we watched it happen.
Yeah, and Gareth Gray said, it is really hard to tell if they are really falling in love or if one or both of them is playing the other one. If they are really falling in love, their relationship is doomed to failure. Villains don't get happy endings. As hard as it is to believe, I think Zelina might be supporting the heroes, becoming a double agent, although she did not seem confident when talking to Belle. She might be planning to try to get Hades to cancel the contract or at least change it. Perhaps Zelina is Hades' weakness in the sense that he will let his guard down around her and allow her to learn his true weakness. My note here. Remember Samson and Delilah? Samson let his guard down and told Delilah his secret. Hold on. I lost my spot.
I decided to bark.
And allow her to learn his true weakness that she can then relay back to the heroes. Zelina's concern about disappointing Regina and not being able to see her baby could help explain her motivation in becoming a double agent. Not trusting Hades and wanting to get her baby away from him might also be part of it. If Hades is playing Zelina, it is probably to get her to kiss him and break the curse on his heart so that he can escape from the underworld with his power intact and allow him to go seek revenge on his brother Zeus. Ruby pointed out that true love is a two-way street. So for the curse to be broken, either Hades and Zelina must truly love each other, or Hades needs to find a loophole, which he's been shown to be good at. Thank you, Gareth Gray, for that great feedback.
Yeah. I was going to say just what I said before. When Zelina suspected him of something very similar, I would think that would make it not true love if he's just using her to escape the underworld. So in that case, if it's not true love, then it can't work. So I don't know about that, but I wouldn't even be surprised to see him go so far as to be plotting revenge on Zelina.
See, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I don't think
True.
he necessarily has to either be in love or be plotting something. I think both are very possible. And I don't think it's a coincidence that in both this episode and in the episode Our Decay 2 weeks ago, the two couples that got these kind of big moments, these big conversations, were Zadie's and Rumbell. I think the show is kind of deliberately setting them up as parallels at the moment. And for all the mistakes that Rumpel has made and all the bad he's done, I don't doubt that he does love Belle. I just think there's something else there. And I think the same might be true with Hades. I do think he's in love with Zelina. I do think he wants some kind of future with her. I don't think he's being 100% honest in any sort of "you're enough for me." And I think that's what's going on with both of those couples, that they have to give something up in order to find this true love and happiness. And the question is, can they?
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. There do seem to be some parallels. I'm not sure what the overall point will be in telling the story in parallel.
Well, I suspect that one couple will get that happily ever after, and one couple won't.
Hmm.
You know, it's the here are the two paths before you. So let's explore what happens when one couple takes this path and the other couple takes path B. And if I had to guess, I would say that Rumbell, just being two main characters, two regular actors, will probably end up with some sort of happily ever after. And Hades,
Hmm.
just by virtue of being the arc villain, won't.
Yeah.
So, he might decide that his plot, his desire for revenge on Zeus, is greater than the love he bears for Zelina, whereas Rumpel might decide the love I bear for Belle is more important than my dagger.
I think you're right, because of two things. Number one, if in this short story arc, Hades and Zelina both get a redemption story and Rumpel stays like he is, there would probably be torches and pitchforks.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, there in the scene that we're gonna get to, as Belle puts herself under the sleeping curse, Rumpel blurted some words that were very. It was quite a leap in logic, and felt honestly like an introduction of another quest. I guess I'll say another goal, another thing that we're supposed to look for, because he said something like, "You expect me to." What did he say? Go to the light so I can wake you up?
Just so I can wake you up.
Just so I can wake you up. And my back of the mind reaction to that is sort of, whoever said anything about that? You guys have always had this true love thing going on, regardless of where you were with the Dark One stuff. So where did this sort of requirement come from?
Well, let's jump to that to discuss that. I think that when what Belle could have said and what I was thinking, it could have been this beautiful moment of her saying, "You will wake me because I have chosen to love you despite your flaws." But instead, she's calling on dear old daddy.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it's kind of like, it's like the Storybrooke / Enchanted Forest way of going home to mother.
Yeah. Runs home to mama.
It's like she has a fight with her husband and she puts herself under a sleeping curse and says, "My dad will wake me." I mean, I'm oversimplifying to be ridiculous, but there was something kind of just ugly about the whole thing. And it is an ugly situation, but it just did not sit well with me.
And do they not remember the burning red room? So is there now going to be a version of that for the baby?
See, that's one of those sort of things where, as long as they're going to deduce things about the effects of their magic, did she ever stop to think what the effects of a sleeping curse on the mother might be on the baby?
Horrible nightmares.
What if it killed the baby?
Yeah.
What? I mean, she doesn't know. She doesn't really know unless she managed to research it in the underworld version of the library. I don't know.
She really doesn't seem to, and this was a point I brought up earlier. She got this from Zelina. She's just trusting in Zelina's curse, dark magic, that will solve her problems. This will somehow halt the growth of the baby, which, how is that going to affect the little child?
Right.
I mean, what if Rumpel and the other heroes can never ever leave the Underbrook? What if they can never get her to Maurice? This is a painful scene.
Yeah. What if Hades, with his eyes and ears everywhere, figures out that another good way to hurt Rumpel is to get rid of Maurice so that Belle can't wake up.
Mm-hmm. Along with a lot of these questions, there was a really good sort of back and forth question going on at the forums. And I'm going to read this from AKA because I thought this was really spot on. I have a question. If Rumple wakes Belle up with True Love's kiss, does that necessarily mean he has to give up his darkness? Can't he give her True Love's kiss and wake her up from her curse while remaining the Dark One? Are they saying he is not capable of true love because he is the Dark One? Rumple has tried True Love's kiss a couple of times now on Belle with no luck, season 2 in the hospital and then the Lacey episodes. But I always thought that that was because Belle did not know who she was and therefore did not share true love with Rumple while having no memories of Belle. Side note, that is how it works because we saw it with Snow White and Prince Charming.
Yeah.
At that time, it was not even mentioned that if he gave Belle True Love's kiss, he would no longer be the Dark One. The other question would be, is the show saying that Belle no longer has true love with Rumple because he is now the Dark One again? I do not think true love could come and go like this. Either you have it or you don't.
Ooh. I like that.
I think what they're setting it up for is that it will be Rumple to wake her.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like the way that Meredith put this. Meredith Pecta said, Belle said in season 5A that True Love's kiss didn't work after that initial time because it was no longer a curse as long as they want it. Belle knows that she can't have any future with Rumple as the Dark One and that she needs to protect her baby. Belle will only awaken now if Rumple is finally willing to choose her over his power. To wake her, he must become powerless. We both know that her father won't wake her up, and no one else has proven that they even care about Belle as a friend. It has to be Rumple as a non-Dark One.
But how does that fly in the face of what we saw in the episode Skin Deep? Because Belle attempted to kiss him then, and it did start to work. Remember, it's working. Kiss me again.
Yeah.
It's never been a problem that he's the Dark One until season 3B and later, when it became such a force just only for bad things. She's supposed to love all of him, even the parts of him that belong to the darkness. She may not like it and he has to stop killing the peasants, but there's no reason why True Love's kiss between them shouldn't work as is.
And I know there's a good discussion thread on this in the forums. And what are some of the highlights from that discussion is what the fans think?
Yeah. So Keb, who is one of our resident experts on Belle, and I asked a question at the top of this section on the present day if anyone out there was still rooting for Rumbelle, and if anyone is, it's Keb. Bless her little soul. And she said, this was a bad idea because it stops Belle's character development and screen time. And to be fair, Emily DeRavin, when they were filming this episode, is incredibly pregnant.
Yeah.
She did need to take some maternity leave. I don't think this was the best way to do it, but to be fair to Emily. So Keb also said they've set it up so both needed to bend to make this work. And now they're back to all or nothing for Rumple. This is leading to exactly that choice. He'll have to choose Belle or power once and for all. And while I'm excited about that, I think it's problematic that Belle is still making ultimatums and not growing as a person until she's woken up. Matt had kind of an interesting idea going along with what we were just talking about with True Love's kiss, that Rumple and the audience are assuming that he'll lose all his powers with True Love's kiss. But what if that isn't necessarily the case? Another possibility is that instead of destroying the darkness and his powers, it converts the darkness into light. After all, we know that the Dark One's power is sourced from the Holy Grail, just like Merlin's. It was not darkness originally, but became darkness when Nimue crushed Vortigern's heart and tainted her magic. So maybe Rumple would become the light one, as shown in season 4's finale, and this could even, quote, cleave him from the dagger. The Dark One willingly ready to lose his powers to save their loved ones could be the ultimate test of selflessness.
I like that theory a lot. And it would be much more in keeping with all the things that they've established through the seasons.
Mhm. By the way, speaking of things being established, while you guys were talking, I did a little quick search on IMDb. Claude is the same Claude. That is Claude. It's acted by Paul Lazenby, and he was in Queen of Hearts, The Outsider, and Ruby Slippers.
That's so great. So they know Claude's timeline. At least we can rest easy knowing that.
Yeah. But bringing this back now, Ruby crosses realms thanks to the slippers, and some of our heroes get to go back to Storybrooke and then or on to Oz, whatever style they go. One thing that kind of struck me in all of this is there was one other possible person who could have given Dorothy true love's kiss.
I know.
Not the love of the people, but who else? Dorothy said, there's only one person, there's only one who understands me, who's been there for me this whole time. Toto. Why didn't they just take Toto up to her lips and, true love's kiss from Toto?
It felt like I said in the initial reaction, it felt like they were gonna go that way or try that at one point.
I think that would have been way too much of a stretch for the true love thing, because we've seen true love expanded and defined in all kinds of ways. True love can be shared between a human and their pet.
Well, here's the thing. It's almost like they had been writing an alternate ending or something weird like that, because they really went out of their way to talk about how important Toto was, and then they started just trying to bottle a blown kiss, and I thought, well, Toto's not looking so ridiculous anymore. I didn't think that was the way they were going. I didn't think either of those things were the way they were going, but
well,
when you compare the two.
Not necessarily the Toto idea, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had an alternate ending for this episode in mind, because of how controversial this episode is. So maybe they even have other recorded material that they were thinking we might go one direction or we might go a different direction.
Well, I don't know about that, but you never know.
Now, if you want to really dig into discussing the relationship between Ruby and Dorothy, since we're keeping that to a minimum here in the podcast, we've got a forum for that, and you're welcome to continue that discussion there in the forum. Just please be respectful to each other. I really think Jeremy, in a very short sentence, said it right in the initial reactions, whereas it took me 2 pages to say what I was thinking. But please remember to be respectful to others and treat each other as humans, and show, this will sound weird, but show love for each other in your conversations with each other. But we do have a thread in the forums where you can discuss this relationship in much more detail if you'd like to. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/244. I want to remind you of a way that you can support the podcast right now, if you'd like to still, is to nominate us in the podcast awards. It's not only Once Podcast, but 2 of our other popular podcasts we'd also like to see nominated in the awards. This may be the last year we try for these awards, but this also could be our best chance this year because of new rules in the awards and the fact that the previous winner can't win again this year. So that might level the playing field a little bit for us.
So is this the listeners giving us our best chance like Snow and Charming, or is this giving ourselves our best chance like Cora?
I think it's everybody giving everybody else their best chance.
Aw, that's so nice.
So if you would like to give our podcast its best chance, then please go to Noodle.mx/podcast awards. It's not a video this time. It's just simple text. It's really simple. It takes fewer than 2 minutes to do this at most. Really may take even less than a single minute to do this. Just nominate our podcast, Once Podcast, as well as only 2 of our other podcasts, The Productive Woman and The Audacity to Podcast, and it needs to go in certain categories, and you just simply copy and paste the text from that page, noodle.mx/podcast awards, paste it into the appropriate fields, complete the form, submit it, That's all that you have to do to nominate us. Do that before May 1st to put your nomination in. You only have to do it once. And then later in May, we'll get to hear who the finalists are. And then that's when the daily voting will start. So if you want some reminders to vote for the podcast every day, and we'll be recommending some of our friends' podcasts as well, then please go to noodle.mx/podcast awards. And every nomination and every vote really does matter. So don't feel like, oh, my vote doesn't matter or my nomination doesn't matter. It does. It matters a lot. So if you'd like to support the podcast and what else we do on the network, go to noodle.mx/podcast awards. This concludes our discussion of this episode, Ruby Slippers, but you're welcome to go to the show notes and continue the conversation there or in the forums. Just please do remember to be respectful to the others there. And if you want to discuss what I shared at the beginning of this episode, then please email me directly, daniel@oncepodcast.com. Please share this episode out with your friends. That's the best way that you can support the podcast. I know this is maybe not the ideal one because of so much controversy, but if you'd like to share this episode or comment on the show notes or get these links and images that we mentioned, then go to the show notes at oncepodcast.com/244. We'd love to connect with you on Twitter at oncepodcast, and I'm Daniel J. Lewis on Twitter at the Ramen Noodle.
I'm Jeremy Laughlin on Twitter at Phlegon. That's PHLEGON.
I'm Jacqueline, and you can follow me on Twitter at punk_bunny_87.
This podcast would not be possible without our great team of volunteers who help us episode after episode. So special thanks to Corbin for sorting our feedback, Jack for writing our show notes, John Buchanan for editing our episodes, Hunter Hathaway and Jacqueline for providing our spoilers. You'll hear from them in a moment. Although, if you're one of our heroes on Patreon, then you got to hear the spoilers days before we recorded and published our podcast episode. Also, thanks to Jacqueline and Matthew Paul for moderating the forums. Thanks to Kev for managing and masterminding our timeline. Thanks to Jenny for managing our Patreon bonuses for our heroes. And thanks to my fellow co-hosts, Jeremy, Aaron, Hunter, and Jacqueline for hosting this podcast with me. And I didn't pick my outro, so I'm looking at that.
I put one in.
Oh, I only saw one.
Did you put the one with the quotation marks around it, Jeremy? Because I have that one too.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yes, so I'll count that as your vote.
Not the third one. I think this would be the wrong one.
Yes,
it's wrong
I know.
episode for that one. Yeah, I like Regina's line. Okay. It was one of my favorites from the episode.
Okay. The timing will be off here, but that's okay because we can shift things around. And until next time, remember, just because you made one bad move, or 30, doesn't mean you can't make a good one now. And thanks for listening. Once Podcast is a proud member of Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Big thanks to our heroes for supporting this episode of the podcast. If you would like to be a hero to the podcast too and get access to cool things like bloopers and our spoilers ahead of time and more, go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. All right, we're finished.
Is it okay that I didn't hear music at all both times?
Don't.
I mean, it's fine. I know the music after 5 years, but...
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to say. Right after we started, they said they couldn't hear it in the chat either.
Yeah, that's fine. It goes into the recording, so that's okay, but it didn't go out to the live stream. I forgot that I had that knob not turned.
Oh.
Like I could hear it barely in the background. It means I didn't get to do my dance, but...
Well, okay. How about, here you go.
Oh. Hunter and I end every single spoiler podcast by singing those notes.
Do-do-do-do-do.
Aaron and I started to try to sing on Sunday night, but we were being more hesitant, and so I sped it up.
I haven't listened to the bloopers yet from that or from the spoilers because I've been too busy this week.
Too busy.
Driving around way too much.
Our spoilers were funny because I forgot how to do anything. And Hunter at one point was just like, "You're not counting down with me." Oh, right. I'm supposed to do something right now.
All right. Well, I'll play these spoilers in a moment. Jacqueline, thank you for joining.
Yes.
And oh yeah, I see your message from earlier about no music too. And
Yeah.
are you going to be doing a review of Winter's War? When does that come out? I forget.
Really soon. Hold on. I actually have my phone right here.
But I think we might do a review, yeah, of The Huntsman Winter's War since it's related to the fairy tale ecosystem.
Did you guys see April 22nd, which is today?
It's today?
It's
Oh, yeah.
today.
Okay, then we probably won't do a review. Because if we were going to see it, it would have been this week. The press screening would have been, so
Yeah.
we missed that.
Oh, wait, what was it?
Huntsman Winter's War.
Oh,
The sequel to The Huntsman from a...
Or
no.
It's the
sequel to
prequel.
some-
oh, is it?
Oh, right. It is.
See, I saw the trailer and I got super confused because I never saw the other movie, and I was just like, didn't they do this movie already?
I can't remember the name of the original movie now, but yeah.
It seems really so stylized. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I can't really judge without seeing them, but it just didn't seem like something for doing a second time.
Yeah, especially because the first one really wasn't that good.
It seems like the trailer should look qualitatively different from the first one to the point that audiences of other movies don't wonder why they're re-releasing the same movie.
Yes.
Mhm. All right, so you guys know the drills for these spoilers. If you don't want to hear these spoilers, then stop listening now.
Stop!
Because this will be the end of our podcast discussion. Thank you very much for joining us, for watching. If you're not subscribed already, go to oncepodcast.com/subscribe. Or not subscribe, no. That doesn't work. That doesn't
Not even
go
a
anywhere.
thing. Go to whatspodcast.com/how does the series end in a few years? And you'll see the whole thing.
.html.
whatspodcast.com/all OUAT seasons for free. And you'll get them. Just do it.
Or just oncepodcast.com and subscribe in the Apple Podcasts app. And we're also now in Google Play Music. That launched this week. So we're available there. I don't have the link on the site
Google
yet,
Play
but
Music.
you can find us. Thank you very much for joining us. And here come spoilers.
Good night.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And good night.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Hi, Oncers. I'm Hunter Hathaway,
And I'm Jacqueline.
and it's spoiler time for Once Podcast, episode 519, Sisters. Now that Hades and Zelina are reunited, Hades tells Zelina that he wants a future with her outside of the underworld. All she needs to do is heal his heart with true love's kiss so they can leave the underworld and trap the heroes there for eternity. When Regina overhears this plan, she enlists Chorus help to find a way to separate Zelina from Hades. However, Cora reveals a family secret that could change Regina and Zelina's lives forever. Meanwhile, David finally meets James, only to realize that his twin is determined to seek revenge on him for stealing the life he could have had. Wow, okay, a lot going on this episode. It's written by David H. Goodman and Bridget Hales and directed by Romeo Tyrone.
And we do have quite a number of guest stars.
And surprises, and I like surprises.
I do like surprises.
The second one was the big one for me.
Okay. We, of course, have Barbara Hershey returning as Cora.
Uh-huh.
We also have Robbie K coming back as Peter Pan.
Yeah, because I never read anything about that in the synopsis.
Yeah, so I'm guessing maybe Rumple and Peter are going to be dueling it out or something.
Father-son moment.
Or moments, bad moments probably. Victoria Smurfett as Cruella de Vil. Tony Perez as the valet, who is also Henry Sr. Adrian Huff as the woodcutter. Ava Akers as young Regina. Isabella Blake Thomas as young Zelina. Romulad Hivert as the guard. And, of course, Greg German as Hades.
Yeah, lots of them this time.
So this is a pretty interesting synopsis that we got because there's almost nothing in it about a flashback.
Yeah.
And we, of course, know that we are getting flashbacks because we have cast young Regina and young Zelina. So there's definitely something going on in the past. But whatever it is, they really don't want to spoil it.
Right. And so I'm thinking it has something to do with the big secret Cora has.
That's what I think. And a couple people at the forums think that the big secret is that Regina and Zelina met when they were young and Cora took away the memories.
Okay. Sounds reasonable.
It sounds very Cora-like.
Yes. So, and it would help move the story along. Be like, oh, we did know each other?
Shocking. So we, of course, got a promo.
Yes. A lot packed into this 30 seconds.
A lot packed in. And the first 3 seconds of the promo are hilarious.
Yes.
Because
I was laughing
Hades...
so hard when I saw it the first time. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Oh, okay.
Because Hades is, like, down on one knee. And he proposes to Zelina by asking her if she will make chaos with him.
Yes. When I first looked at it, I'm like, what the? He's proposing. Oh, make chaos. Got it.
It's such a weird way to ask anybody to do anything.
Yeah. Especially the down on one knee part.
Yeah, those two are a trip.
And then somehow Hades gets Cruella's car. At least I think it's her car. It looks like her car. You only see a quick little flash of it from the inside. And Regina tries to talk Zelina out of being with a villain. And Zelina, of course, is like, I don't want to hear you pretending to care about me now. And that's when I think they're going to do a flashback and they're going to meet and stuff like that.
Agreed. And Cora believes that Zelina is in more danger than they realize. Because Cora, of course, has had dealings with Hades.
Right. She's been around him a lot longer.
Mm-hmm. And then we do see the other sibling pair in this episode, which is James and David, meeting on the street, and it looks like a fight breaks out.
Yes, it looks like kind of fun. They're going to, James is going to try and beat up David.
And then the last scene of the promo is really strange. James is holding a gun to Robin's face, who is in the woods with Emma.
Yeah, that looks really interesting.
And, of course, we've been spoiling for a while now that we're pretty sure Robin Hood's going to die. But I don't think it's this episode. Everyone kind of thinks that it's either the last few moments of episode 20 or episode 21. So I think he makes it out of this situation.
Okay, good. But yeah, it's like out of the blue. Like, because there was no mention of him at all in the synopsis. And so it must be just like a little filler scene.
Yeah, and this is the first time we've seen Robin in 2 episodes.
Yeah. And we got some photos.
We got very few photos.
Yeah. They're really just stills of individual characters, Zelina, Regina, and Cora. And then there was one behind-the-scenes photo of a group shot of the 3 of them smiling and hugging.
Yeah.
So we got absolutely nothing from this.
Yeah, and the stills look like it's probably just one scene.
Yes.
And there are none of the flashback, which, again, like the synopsis, is kind of strange. So they are obviously trying to keep the flashback under wraps.
Yeah. So we're going to learn something big. It's the only thing I can think of.
I agree.
But Zelina got rid of her hat, and that just made me happy.
The hat with the horrible feather.
There were like 2 feathers just stuck on the side.
Like they were glued on there with hot glue guns.
So that's all we have for the next episode for you guys. But we do have a little bit of, well, I guess you could say it's information for the finale.
It was presented as information for the finale, but it's not actually about the finale. And this comes from TV Guide. And the little snippet that they wrote says, the 2-hour finale will bring the heroes' time in the underworld to an end, but will all of them make it back to Storybrooke? Hades and Zelina will make bold moves to have their happily ever after together, and Hades is bound and determined to keep as many fresh souls as he possibly can. The question is, can the evil power couple fend off a threatened Rumpelstiltskin? He is not likely to let them off lightly for trying to take his and Belle's unborn child. But this isn't actually the finale.
And we kind of already knew all that stuff.
This is actually much more in reference to episode 520, Firebird, and then episode 21, Last Rites. Because we know that for the 2-hour finale, most of it seems to take place in New York City and then in Storybrooke.
Yes.
And that they've come home from the underworld by the time we get to the 2-hour finale.
And it says that it's the finale. It says online that the finale is May 15th at 8 p.m., but we do know it's to be at 7 p.m.
Yes, it is airing at 7 p.m. so that ABC can air all their Sunday night dramas. So make sure you guys readjust your DVRs if that's how you watch.
Yes. So that's pretty much all we have this week. It's a very light week. We're getting to the end of the season.
Yep.
So I'm Hunter. You can follow me on Twitter at Traveling Pixie.
And I'm Jacqueline, and you can follow me on Twitter at punk_bunny_87.
Until next time, Oncers.